trying to move them out. I heard they have better weather and better lasers. Wait till my friends have got it, trying to move them out. I heard they have better weather and better lasers. Wait till my friends have got it, trying to move them out.
All right, California City, hit by landslides, it was at risk for decades, and the slipping may not be stoppable. Now, you guys didn't know this is up my alley. I saw this a couple days ago, and of course, some people reported this is because of earthquakes, but I think it actually is related to earthquakes and to tectonic shifts that are going on underneath California, but I'll tell you, of course, why I think that here in a second. But first of all, if you did not see, and not too many are talking about it, there's so many big stories right now that something like this can kind of go under the radar. Not to mention, I've seen it minimized by almost everybody that's talked about it. Now, Gavin Newsom has actually declared a state of emergency, but again, almost everything gets a state of emergency declared in almost every state. If you have a flood, if you have a fire, if you have a earthquake, it's a state of emergency. Heck, I think our country is still on a state of emergency since, CV. I don't even think it would ever stop. But again, I could be wrong. As far as this goes, the scenes from it look like something out of the Rock movie, San Andreas. It literally looks like something out of one of those scenes. In fact, one of the streets that was messed up and had this huge kind of divot, huge 80-foot crack wide thing, straight up looked like a scene that, what's-his-face drove the limo in that San Andreas movie. Or maybe it was 2012 that had that scene, but I believe it was one of those earthquake movies where they were driving the limo and it was so absurd over the top. I think that was San Andreas. But either way, that's the scene. It literally looked like it was out of that. Now, the thumbnail is actually from and derived from a real photo. I added, of course, the lettering and everything else. But that street is real. The house is basically like dropping into it. I'll show you some Twitter videos here in just 2 seconds, and I'll actually go over this article. But first, I do want to remind you guys, make sure to go check out, of course, marfooglenews.com. You can find a full bibliography of every single article, tweet, video, picture, document. And, of course, go check out the best solar generator on the market. And that is literally my actual opinion. Again, I believe in this generator. I think that it's going to save lives. I think that it's going to get people through disasters. It is a solar generator that's not only modular, it is, again, expandable up to 96 batteries. And, of course, you can add in different mods that change the entire features of it. You can add pretty much any feature and every feature to make it literally go, toe-to-toe with the literal top-rated generators in the world. There's no feature that you most likely cannot add to this. And I say most likely because if there is some sort of new tech, that they're probably working on it right now to be able to add it in just like a Lego and have that tech. As far as toughness, this is the same generator that just got sent out with the STTR Phase 2 contract with the U.S. Army. So the Army will have these soon. It is a steel reinforced frame, 1,500-pound latch system, and of course heated batteries in a heater in every battery to make sure that it can deal with extreme colds. So go check it out. Again, it's very easy. It can be as portable as you want it, or it can be as stationary. It could be an entire wall of batteries if you want it. So again, it's a very awesome system. marfooglenews.com/energy, and make sure to use the code Marfoogle. Not only do you get a huge discount, but you also help our independent news at the same time. Independent news and independent creators are getting attacked left and right now. So we appreciate you guys supporting us through that, but mostly share our stuff out and make sure to click that notification bell to all. So first of all, this slip that happened, and we're also going to talk about the Starliner and the potential for it to crash into the United States. So do look up. This entire thing is just absolutely nuts. Let's bring in my co-host/internet brother, Dex James. What is going on and how are you doing today?
Well, hello, Adam, and hello, Foogle fam. I'm doing just fine.
All right, crystal clear. So first of all, this is in Rancho Palos Verdes, and I've heard a lot of people minimize this and basically say, it's 245 homes. First of all, this is in areas where the homes aren't, a foot apart like they are here. But again, it is actually a huge area. And some have said that it is as long of an area as 1.5 miles. If you could think of a crack that big, I mean, it's most likely, even if it was less than that, these things are so wide, this thing is going to be visible from space. Now, it's not a crack like the Grand Canyon. It is landslides and all of these divots, and I'll actually show you some of that now. Dex, when you first saw this, I mean, aren't the scenes just like, they're insane? They look like something out of a movie.
Yeah, they certainly do. I mean, I had the same thoughts you did about, something you've seen in a movie, whether it's San Andreas or one of those earthquake type movies. But yeah, you just see this entire road just kind of caving in and everything caving into it.
Yeah, and then they have drone footage flying over. Here's a tennis court, and the tennis court is essentially cracked underneath. You've got multiple cracks. And then you have here, you can't really tell. You'll have to go watch the video for yourself. But there's a massive crack, a drop, and then there's these crevices that look like they're 20 feet deep over on the left, right next to a road. You can see that there where, of course, it doesn't look like your typical landslide. This looks like something that, it just straight up the ground underneath is dropping. Now, as far as some of the crazier shots here, in that beginning, you can see that this is a road where the entire neighborhood just basically dropped. Some of the actual, top-down shots of this are just absolutely nuts. In fact, I'll show you those here in just a second. But yeah, as far as this goes, now this is Rancho Palo Verdes, and the different articles that go along with this talk about this. It again says that now movement is accelerating, whereas ground slid downward 8 inches annually in the years past. It has lurched 13 inches per week in some places between July and August. Imagine having your house on top of that. Now, just a reminder, this area will not even insure homes. There is no insurance, and actually we have covered this in California because of the wildfires, the disasters, the earthquakes. There are so many people in California that either cannot get any insurance at all, or they have to pay the most craziest, most insane, high-risk insurance premiums that you've ever seen just to be able to protect their homes. In fact, most of the state farms and places like that, they won't even touch it anymore. In fact, they've made announcements just in the last 6 months that basically all these houses in California, they won't even put a 50,000-foot pole and insure them. So what are they left with? High risk insurance and basically or none at all. Dex, go ahead.
In addition to, I think the insurance doesn't even cover landslides if they did have insurance. But in addition to that, there's a couple hundred that don't even have electricity because the power company shut off the power due to potential for fire. And it's their own expense now, if they live there and they want to continue to live in their house, to get their own power source. So they're going to have to find a renewable source and build it on their property because they're not bringing power back into that area at the moment.
Yeah, so one gentleman is actually living off of his solar. Again, if you are in California, it's awesome to have solar because you guys have tons and tons of sun. And a lot of you already have kind of converted or at least had dual conversion there. But 8 inches a year is measurable, and they have had to do repairs on the road that crosses the area. But now it's moving so rapidly that they've had to just close a number of roads, turn off the gas supply, and cut electricity. Now, some look at this as the bigger picture, and some are actually saying that with all of the weird events this last year seismically, that California might actually have something happening underneath it that is a way bigger picture. Now, I didn't put this in the show, but August 28th, Baja, their local newspaper in Baja, actually put out a article talking about how they foresee in the future that Baja will basically disconnect from the rest of California. We've all heard these jokes about, California just straight up falling off of the United States, but it's actually not funny looking at not only the San Andreas, but some of the other fault lines that are ticking time bombs in California. If you live in California, you guys have a lot of little tremors. It's more normal. If you're in California and you feel a shaking, most people don't even react at first. They're like, okay, they wait to see how long it is. They watch their watches, or they just kind of go, okay, let's wait until it goes. And then they go about their day. They don't have a second thought. In Washington here, we've had at least, I don't know, 5 or 6 in my lifetime, at least 5 or 6 that I could feel. I'm sure we have tons of little 2.0, 3.0s, but the ones that I felt, including the big Nisqually earthquake, they're very, very scary. Now, the Nisqually, I think, was about 40, 45 seconds, something like that. Once you get into a minute long, that's where you hit a 7.0 earthquake. Once you hit into an 8, you're getting into like a 2.5, 3 minutes. Once you get to a 9.0, which is what is predicted along the entire West Coast, all the way from Canada to California, much into California, that one will cause a 125-foot tsunami in some areas with, of course, jetties like in Moclips, Washington, but at least, something 30 to 60-foot waves coming inland. And as far as the previous events like this, Native Americans actually reported and recorded as far as 20 miles inland. So that's insane. As FEMA said, when that happens, everything west of I-5 will be toast. At least the FEMA director said that. So experts have been looking at all of these, and one thing to also pay attention to if you are on the West Coast, especially California, Oregon, and Washington, of course, and even in Canada, is that these events can trigger other events. Now, they're saying this is because there's water underneath, and they're even saying that as far as 300 feet deep, that there's water that they found, but they cannot dig down enough to basically take that water out. So this is going to get worse and worse, and I foresee that we might see some much, much crazier pictures on, of course, on the news here soon that will show entire areas or groups of houses that just basically drop into a sinkhole. So it's a very scary thing. Now, if they do have an earthquake that combines with this anywhere near Rancho Palos Verdes, they are all screwed. I mean, this is a literal disaster that is already happening, and it is a catastrophic disaster waiting to happen. So let's, again, I'll pop open another picture at the very end here and show you the top-down. Or actually, Dex, I wanted to try to locate a top-down view of one of the 80-foot kind of cracks. Can you look down a top-down version of this landslide? Because I was going to pull it up, but I don't want to stop people.
See if I can find something.
Okay. I think you could do earthquake crack on Twitter and find it, but going into this other crazy story, now today's show almost ended up getting titled "Do Look Up" because apparently the former NASA engineer warns that Boeing Starliner could lose control during return and crash into a populated area. Now this is almost comical, and of course it's not because there's lives involved, and even more lives involved if it ever hits somewhere. But it's almost comical how much bad press Boeing has been getting. It is pretty much any direction you look, there is something bad about Boeing. I've talked about this many times before because I am from Washington, somewhere where everybody knows somebody who has worked at Boeing or has had family members work at Boeing. It was a staple of our state. If you lived in Washington, you pretty much knew somebody that their lives or their whole careers were at Boeing. 3 of my family members, at least, that I can just think off the top of my head, worked at Boeing. So again, the fact that it went from having, not a perfect reputation, but not a bad one whatsoever, to in the last 2 years, basically people are afraid to fly in a Boeing plane because they think that the tires or the doors are going to fall off, or just straight up the whole nose of the plane is going to dive down and everybody is going to perish. Why is this? Well, it also has kind of snuck into the space area as well because Boeing made Starliner. Later today, NASA will attempt to autonomously undock Boeing's much maligned Starliner spacecraft from the International Space Station and deorbit it for a soft landing in the New Mexico desert. Glaring technical issues, of course, plaguing the spacecraft's propulsion systems led NASA to abandoning plans to bring it to the 2 astronauts it carried to space back home on its return journey, instead of scheduling the pair to come back home to Earth on a SpaceX mission in February. So again, they actually have to stay there another 4 months. And think about this. This is straight out of a movie too. If these guys are truly chilling up there until February, think about what could possibly happen in November. And I just watched one of the episodes of Fear. I think they've had so many movies that have shown this kind of scenario where people are up in space when some disaster goes down on Earth. But I think it was Fear the Walking Dead that showed Victor talking to a cosmonaut on his yacht, and the cosmonaut got stuck up there when everybody turned to zombies. And I was just thinking, like, this situation could literally happen right now in November if things really go down. If we hit a World War III, two guys up in space that, were at one point unlucky, might just get lucky and miss the end of the planet. Now, I'm totally exaggerating, but again, it's kind of crazy that they are now stuck there until supposedly February. This is just horrible. I'm surprised with all the launches that SpaceX is doing. Like, they can't just rearrange something. I know it takes a lot of work, but why couldn't they just go up, like, snap their fingers and go up there and get them down? It's not like it's going to the moon. It's in an orbit around the planet. But I don't know what goes into it. Again, I'm not a rocket scientist and I'm not an engineer, so I'm sure it's more complicated than it sounds. But yeah, what do you guys think? And of course, now they're saying that there's a higher probability that the Boeing Starliner service module thrusters will exceed their design temperature limits and fail during the deorbit burn. He then says, therefore, there's a high probability that it will impact in a populated area. Downtown Houston? ? The only safe way to handle the Starliner is to put it into death dive deorbit trajectory into the Pacific. The email continued, the NASA safety panel remains silent on this catastrophic issue. Will your silence get someone unalived? It's quite crazy to say the least. Okay, and then Dexter...
And Adam, that craft has already departed the ISS, and in about 7 to 10 minutes, it's going to actually start its descent. And it will splash down just around, or not splash, because it's landing in the desert. That'll happen around midnight, so about 45 minutes from now, maybe 50 minutes from now. If it goes as planned, it will come in and land with parachutes and a big cushion in the desert. Otherwise, who knows where it's going to hit?
Yeah, I mean, you just, at this point, we don't know. I would not be surprised by anything. I mean, who is surprised by anything at this point? I was going to try to find this earthquake real quick, and let's see here.
Yeah, all the videos I found are the same one we had.
Yeah, so let me see if I can find the top-down version here. Let me see. Yeah, I mean, it's just an absolutely crazy. We'll end up putting it onto the website here. So I was going to show you this top-down view because it really is insane. And then with all of the weird events happening in at that weird base that they have there that does experimental weapons, it's like they've just had a lot of weird events in the last, couple years. Yeah, but that video and all of the tweets will be over on marfooglenews.com. Join us over on our other show. We're going to actually cover all of the rest of the news. In fact, we have a really insane show planned for you tonight because we are covering some insanely creepy stuff. And by the way, they are now putting Dragon's Teeth virtually on the entire border of NATO. And look at what time it is. I mean, we're now less than 2 months away from the big day. And now it looks like it is pumping up where all of NATO is preparing for an invasion by Russia. Will that actually happen? We don't know, but we'll talk about it in just a moment. Stick around if you're in the chat. You'll be ported over automatically. And if you are watching the replay, all you have to do to get to our next show, which will be the full-length show talking about everything, breaking down all the current events, all you have to do is click right here. Make sure to subscribe and make sure to hit that notification bell. Be safe, be prepared, and Marf out.
Better weather and better lasers. Hey to my friends, I got it, Johnny Motorman.